I just got this thing. All right. I mean, as a New Zealander, I would expect him to be here. This is the second one I've been here, and he hasn't come. I don't know. I think he's just afraid of airplanes at this point. Okay, so before we get started, I want to be 100% clear, since there's a lot of you guys. I don't want to get lynched. This is what we're going to be talking about. Is we're talking about an analysis on the roadmap, and that'll be fairly quick, of what's done so far, what isn't, why it isn't done, what its status is. And then I'm going to talk about what beta is for DayZ. And at that point, I'm going to open it up to Q&A. I want you guys to ask me whatever the hell you want to ask. Well, I would keep it on game. Like, don't ask questions about my mother or something. That's just weird. But keep it about the game. And aside from that, I just want to make it very clear. I don't have any crazy footage of helicopters or something like I had at TwitchCon. I already burned through that. But I do have a status report coming out immediately after where there's some cool stuff that I want to show, but I don't want to ruin it because this is live stream. That would defeat the purpose of the status report. So let's get started. All right. So a quick definition of what DayZ is, in case there happens to be someone here that hasn't played it. It's a post-apocalyptic survival sandbox. We'd like to say the key phrases are scavenge, slay, and survive, and in whatever order you so see fit. I'd like to say the memorable experiences in DayZ, and that's really what I think DayZ is about. That's why people keep coming back, is because of the memories that you get from playing the game. And that comes from the interaction, or in some cases, the actual avoiding of interaction with other players. Whether you happen to go kill someone, make friends with them, or intentionally avoid them because you don't want to lose your gear. Those kinds of experiences are what make DayZ. We entered early access in the last 2 weeks of 2013. I like to say the last 2 weeks of 2013 because you'd be surprised how many people like to talk to me about DayZ's development as if it came in January 2013. Last 2 weeks. So yeah, you could say we're in 2013 by like 14 days. Our current goal for beta is the end of 2015. I needed to update that one. It was the end of 2015. And right there, I cover, this is actually from RTX, that it may and most likely will end up being extended a few months, but no longer than that. I will go into detail towards the end of the presentation on exactly how far we anticipate that being and why, so everybody understands what's going on. And our current goal for release from early access is still mid-2016, whether that be at the beginning of quarter 2 or the end of quarter 2, beginning of quarter 13. We're still aiming for that, and if that changes, we'll make sure to keep people updated through the status reports over at devhub.dayz.com or just dayz.com. You can click the DevHub button. You'd be surprised how often I accidentally end up typing devhug.dayz.com on Twitter. Okay, so our current stable version is 0.58. We incubated 0.58 on the experimental branch longer than previous builds. The reason behind that is I wanted a smoother experience moving from experimental to stable. The longer we're on experimental, the easier it is for us to catch things, and the easier it is for you guys to report them and get proper repro steps to us. Now, that's a double-edged sword, I've noticed. We're going into the second update to DayZ where we want to incubate things longer, and that'll be 0.59. Now, that's incubated internally longer for reasons that I will hit later on here, I think in a couple slides. Again, the whole reason behind me making this decision is that there's a large user base for DayZ, and there's just absolutely no way that all 3.5 million of those people are interested in playing a development build. They want to play a game. You know, they watch YouTube videos, they watch Twitch streams, and they see DayZ at its best in most cases, and they want to play that. So an effort was made to spend more time incubating builds internally than just putting it out there and hoping people can deal with the bugs. What this means is that it's led to us, a good example would be 0.58 on stable, if anybody's been playing that recently. I'd say within the last month, a pretty nasty issue that I like to call ground swimming came up. And when we looked at the cause, we knew exactly what was going on and how we could fix it. But branching just to fix that one issue would have cost us more time, and in the end, it would have just been trying to put a bandage on a broken leg instead of properly rolling out the fix with 0.59. So just to be clear, Yeah, ground swimming is going away. There we go. Several issues related to player position synchronization, vehicle synchronization, and animations. That's the ground swimming, as well as rubber banding. For those that have played 5.8, you'll notice it seems to be a little more problematic. The position of players snapping back and forth when you're in combat. It makes close quarters combat especially really frustrating. So that was one of the things paired with the vehicle position synchronization for passengers in vehicles. You know, if you're in the passenger seat, the guy that's driving sees everything fine, but you see the truck bouncing off every building as you go through town. It's actually made some of my friends motion sick. It's just a mess, and that absolutely had to be improved if we're going to roll 5.9 out with the new vehicles. Like, no one's going to want to touch these multi-passenger, high-speed moving vehicles if every time that someone that's a passenger, not a driver, looks around, they can't tell whether they're in a car accident or everything's fine. Nobody wants that. All right, so as the team is working on large merges and changes to the base engine, hot fixing was not a viable use of resources. Some of the things, for those that have been paying attention to the status reports, I think was it the last status report? I think it was the last status report. We showed something that I think is probably the largest consumer-facing massive change to DayZ gameplay, and honestly, gameplay to any title between any of the ARMA titles, at least, that's coming out of Bohemia has been. And that's, as the new player controller and animation system become viable for us, I showed a video of one of our senior designers, Jan, working on a completely rewritten action system, an end script, that moves away from that old clunky RV perform in an action situation where let's say you eat a can of beans or you bandage yourself. You have to stop and you get stuck in that animation, and we have like a kind of a cheap way of letting you get out of that, because that was one of the most frustrating things in playing DayZ mod for me. I would go to do something, and then someone would come around the corner, and I'd be stuck bandaging myself, screaming at my character to stop, move, I need to get out of here. So Peter, our lead designer, put in early on a cancel action, cancel current action, cancel all action. It's an improvement on the way it operated the mod, but it's not good enough. And that's where this video I'm talking about comes in. Jan, the designer I mentioned, has to go through all the actions in the game and rewrite them in the new end script language, so that they plug into the new player controller and animation system, which will allow people twofold improvements in gameplay. So the action you perform, let's say you're eating a can of beans or drinking water, the quantity that you get from that is entirely dependent on how long you hold down the action button for that. So, it's a difference between me taking a light sip of water, or a lot of it. It's entirely dependent on how long I drank the bottle, and that's how it will be in game. And that's for all actions in game. It'll also allow us to get rid of, as much as I'm sure some people either watching or here will be displeased to hear, get rid of spamming drink from the well to get hydrated really quick. So you will actually have to hold down the action button to get hydrated. But paired with that, it also allows for full canceling of the action by movement. So if you happen to be eating a can of beans or bandaging yourself or putting a splint on a friend, whatever the case may be, the second you move, the second you release that key and move, you're good. Now for eating, I know that the designers are also making sure that you'll be able to eat on the go. So if you're eating, you're not stuck standing there eating. You can eat and walk or drink and walk, whatever the case may be. And I think that's also massively important. It might sound fairly small in the grand scheme of things, because there are larger issues on an engine level that we're going to be talking about. But this, for gameplay, I honestly feel is one of the largest changes that we have seen for DayZ in any RV title. This is, I don't know, for somebody that has over 5,000 hours in DayZ, I feel like this is massive. So the issues that we talked about earlier, duplication, ground swimming, there was some vulnerabilities that were being exploited by cheat authors. We've earmarked those as must fix for 5.9 experimental. Ground swimming's gone. That's done internally. I'd say we're 99% sure that we've got every repro. So if you find one when it hits experimental, which should be, cross your fingers, very soon, I would really appreciate a bug report on that. All right. So for 5.9, it's undergoing the last blocking issue for experimental branch viability. That is the player or the position of vehicles. It has to be an improvement. We're trying a lot of things internally. The programs right now are trying moving all of that to the server, and that being synchronized to clients with the server being the authority, the absolute authority, rather than sharing some of that client to client. That's raised some different issues, but I think we might be able to more easily address those than trying to deal with the client-to-client situation. That is the only thing right now holding back 5.9 experimental. That's it. Maybe you could say I'm a bit of a perfectionist, or maybe I'm just really sensitive about what you guys are going to think of the stable updates as they come out. I want everybody to have a good time, especially when it comes with new mechanics, because everybody's going to want to try the new vehicles. Everybody's going to want to try the manual transmission. You should be able to do it and have a good time doing it. They told me not to do that. We want people to be able to, I hit that point already. Let's skip right past that. Another good news here, initial tests internally, it looks like 75 players is going to be a viable, rewarding experience. So that will mean that all of our servers, all the official DayZ ones at least, and I imagine most of the community Reddit ones are going to go straight up to 75. And I think that is a bare minimum for enjoying gameplay in DayZ. Absolutely, 75 players minimum. Like once we expanded Chernarus into Chernarus Plus and made nearly every structure on the map a viable location for gear, that meant that players tend to spread out when we have the economy working properly, if they're not clustered on the coast when we don't. So 75 players, absolute bare minimum, and I'm really eager to see how that plays out in the long run. The infected will in fact be returning for 5.9. But that said, in future status reports I want to talk about this, so I won't go too far into it, but we are planning some extensive changes to how the server distributes them, and thus how the user perceives the quantity of them. One of the things we tried on immediately when DayZ hit early access was a global spawn, because if you played DayZ mod enough, you knew that one of the janky things about that was that it was a trigger-based spawning for both loot and infected. So the longer you played DayZ, the more you knew about this. You got some binoculars, you scope out a village. If it's got within 300 meters of a player, they'll be infected there. And if there's not, then there's no player nearby. It's a bit of metagaming that it's just ridiculous. So one of the things we moved to, as I said, is a global spawn. That meant that we have a set quantity of infected, and we have regions where they should spawn, and then the server doles them out. It goes, we'll put these many here, these many here. And that meant that while the infected are asleep, because that's how the AI is written, if there's no players nearby to activate it, it's in sleep mode, so it's not taking resources. It's still counted against the maximum quantity on the server. So we might not be using all, say, 500 that are in the north, but that 500 is used in the per server maximum of 1,000. So you're only seeing, say, 500 down south, when ideally I'd much rather you guys just be using all of the infected on the server near where players are. It'll look like there's a lot more. Let's say if we cram 700 infected to where the players are, and the players are only in, 3 specific bubbles on the map, it's going to be chaos with the infected. That's an insane ratio. Let's say there's 20 people in each of these bubbles, and I don't know, maybe 200 to 175 infected for those 20 people. That's a mess. It should be awesome. All right, roadmap stuff. Now, some of you might not have seen the RTX presentation. Some of you might have. Not too much has changed. There's a couple things that were pushed, and I go deeper into those to update people as to what's going on with them. One of them being the glorious new render module. I did it again. All right, basic vehicles. I think I have fat thumbs. Basic vehicles. The first thing for that was the implementation of that was a vehicle that we can test the attachment and vehicle simulation on, and that was the V3S chassis, and then we expanded that into the V3S cargo later on. So basic vehicles, you can check that off. Advanced loot distribution, that is effectively done. It requires a lot of fleshing out, but the feature is there. And that's one of the first, before we get any deeper into the roadmap, I'll be very clear. When dealing with the roadmap of DayZ in development, each of these features you'll see in the PowerPoint presentation, the roadmap is aiming towards when the feature has been created, not when it's fully fleshed out, where all the content's on it and it's bug-free. It's when it's been created. And we can move on, while we're in alpha, to the next system, as long as it's basically functioning. That is the goal. So advanced loot distribution, we have global per item quantity and rarity control. For those that started playing 5.8 initially on, you'll immediately notice that all the rare loot moved off the coast, and people actually had to go to the airfield and so on and so forth. And some weapons were a lot rarer than others, and people were questioning if I was actually spawning M4s or if I was just trolling the whole community and took them out of the game. No, they're just really rare. Dynamic event frequency and radius control. So the dynamic events in the dynamic event system, the easiest way to explain that is the helicopter crashes and police cars. And for us, the event frequency and radius control is part of the central loot economy. It's another page in there where we can go in and on both a per server and a global level, we can increase or decrease the amount of these that are spawned at one time, the radius in which they're spawned within players and cleaned up within players. And this is all stuff that later on will end up in the hands of server operators. Item type, storage type, and time persistence for each instance. This means that items that are on the ground, player camps, all that kind of stuff, that's saved and persists between server restarts. And the program has expanded that into time persistence, so that when a server restarts, it doesn't cycle back to the start of the clock. It's the same time it was when it shut down. All right, the new renderer. Our current status, testable and underway with internal QA. I don't want to be overly optimistic here, but I believe I'd say 90% of QA is working on the new renderer, like testing it paired with all the features right now anyways. Post processes are currently underway with the rendering team. That's a portion of the engine team that's working on that. Water surfaces and ocean surfaces are not present, being worked on. This is kind of exactly what they're working on right now, so you guys understand. Optimization and parallelization. Now the big takeaway here, and the reason why we don't just like push it out there and do it incrementally like some other stuff is, it's very important that when we do this, the first time people get their hands on it, there is a marked improvement for performance in cities. It has to happen. Like, we can't just push it out there and be like, oh, it's the same, but it's going to get better. People will want to kill me, for one. And for those that watched the most recent status reports, the map team has made it down to the coast as far as their revitalization of Chernarus. And the two major cities that they haven't touched yet, that they're working on right now, is Chernogorsk and Electro. And I've seen Chernogorsk. Senchi's team is effectively done with it. They just have to finish the textures, the surface textures. The problem is, we cannot push New Chernogorsk until we push the renderer out there with the optimization and parallelization pass complete. Because, well, I mean, can you imagine? Everybody loves Chernogorsk. You running down there at 10 frames, that's horrible. It needs to be working better. So Senchi's team is holding the Chernogorsk update for the push of the new render to experimental. New infected AI. The initial implementation rolled out. The current goals are aimed at optimizing the server resource and increased infected amounts. What this means is the original AI that we launched the title with, the original infected AI that could see you from what seemed like 1,500 meters away and like ignored stairs and ran through them and that whole mess and ignored doors. That went the way of the dodo. That was completely rewritten, and new sensors were created for this AI. It is significantly less demanding on server and performs a lot better when it works right. Basic stealth system is paired with this infected AI. The initial system rolled out, I think it was 5.7 when that hit. And if you played it, one of the things you would notice is that you could actually, for the first time in DayZ standalone, I hate that name, by the way. I just call it DayZ, but then people get confused. Crouching, holding a low profile, crawling and stuff around town. One of the first things that I did when I picked up the mod, that was a viable tactic now. The infected did not notice you without line of sight, and that was awesome. And I'm eager to see that working with increased infected amounts that are distributed properly. I think all paired together, it's going to be a different game when it comes to menacing infected AI. The diseases system, the brain prion disease from human meat, cholera from untreated water, and food poisoning are the 3 base diseases we have plugged into that. We're going to expand that into more diseases once we get into beta. But it's in and it's functioning. Diseases can be transmitted from player to player. They can be transmitted from player to item and item to player and so on and so forth. Improved cooking and horticulture. Now, prototype extension was rolled out to Stable Branch with, I think, 5.7 or 5.8. We want to expand on this further when the new UI is fully functional. A lot of the crafting stuff is effectively depending on us rolling out that new UI. We don't want to do like a hack-and-hide, drag this onto this and then this onto this. We want it to be a lot more intuitive. We want it to flow better, and we want more complex recipes, but that requires the new UI to do it. We don't want to waste time trying to get the old UI to do it. It'll just balloon the development time. The advanced anti-cheat, the evolving battle eye, for those that played 5.3 and before, you know that's working. Stronger process and memory protection deployed earlier this year. What that meant is we shut down, I'd say, 95% of all people, known people cheating in DayZ, and all public DayZ cheats. The challenge for us at this point is A, increasing the speed that we respond to the issues, and B, cutting off private cheats at the knees. That is the most difficult thing for us to track down, is competent hobbyists who are writing their own cheats and not distributing them, so we can't get a hold of them and find out what the vulnerability is. This is going to be an ongoing thing. It's never ending, and my associate producer Eugen is responsible for this, and I got to tell you, he's burning it at both ends, but he's doing a great job. All right, second quarter goals. Advanced vehicles, repair and modification. So the vehicle parts have been expanded on 5.9 to a little more parts, but still not where I want it to be. We've expanded the vehicle selection types. For those that aren't aware, as soon as 5.9 hits, we will have the bus, the civilian hatchback, and the civilian sedan and the off-road hatchback pushed, and the quantity of vehicles that are available within a DayZ session are, I believe, going to either double or near triple. So that'll be interesting to see that operate. We've also begun artwork on, as people have seen, two-wheeled vehicles and aerial vehicles. We want to expand this into different operational fluids, so aviation fuel, diesel fuel, gasoline, motor oil, and so forth. It's effectively taking what the mod did and expanding upon it. One of the things that I didn't really enjoy about the mod, and I always thought was kind of weird, is how you could take a tire from a pedal bike and put it on a UAZ or a semi-truck. It just made no sense. And the same fuel that would be used in what is clearly a gasoline would be used in a diesel engine and so forth. And it's one of the big things we have to be careful with, is not taking it too far into the simulation side, so it's not fun, but just a little bit farther than the mod. It's for a lot of the base features of DayZ mod, that's kind of the goal, is take it just a couple steps further, add some more content to it, a little bit more depth, but don't go crazy. I'm always telling Peter, my lead designer, I'm like, Peter, you got to be very conscientious of exactly how far you take this, because you're a game designer. You're going to want to make it super complex and complicated and this intricate puzzle, and our audience is going to get a hold of it and go, Jesus Christ, it took me 3 hours to find this one thing, and I need to find 8 more. This isn't fun. Advanced animals, that includes a life cycle and group behavior. Present on 5.8 Stable Branch, it is there. It's got some bugs with it, you could say. It's not behaving the way it should, but the feature exists and it is there. The team responsible for that is working on bug fixing that, so it's in a more enjoyable state for Stable Branch. Changes to distribution handling for them as well as the infected is currently being investigated. Player statistics. This is actually actively being tracked right now. You guys can't see it because it's going to be displayed within the new UI in the main menu. Adding this kind of stuff into the legacy UI didn't make sense, but we are actively recording statistics on the central Hive side. And we'll probably expand upon that both in what we display in game and then what can be accessible via a web API, so that those who are interested in writing their own apps and adding stuff into their own websites as far as how complex the statistics for their DayZ survivors go, you can do that. New user interface tech, the new UI I've spoken about. Blocking issues are currently being resolved by the programming team. We've made a lot of strides in this in the last few months. And the design team is working on a rollout of the initial UI screen changes, like the main menu. The server browser is absolutely huge for me. It'll probably be the first areas you start to see that. I think it's critical that we utilize the main menu to start communicating development information with you guys. More people see it if it's in their face when they launch the game than those horrible little red messages. Battle Eye says, the server's going to restart, so on and so forth. We tried that. You play DayZ long enough, you start blocking those red messages out. So it's absolutely critical that that and a more structured server browser, so people understand when they're playing on the official servers and when they're not. It's shit. It's even hard for me to understand nowadays. I go in the server browser, I'm like, oh, what am I playing on? Player stamina. Rewrite a new player actions, the stuff I talked about earlier, which is dependent on the new player controller and animation system is underway. Once remaining blockers on the new player controller are complete, the implementation of a stamina system should incrementally be occurring. Dynamic events, we talked about earlier, they are functioning, spawning, cleaning up, and respawning on experimental and stable. Dynamic control over the quantity, frequency, cleanup, and respawn of the system is functioning. World containers. So initial prototype world containers came out by the fridges. If you found them, I think on Stable Branch right now, there's like 30 of them stacked in one spot. Those are containers that are actually distributed via the map and cannot be moved, but can be used to store things. The design team has some interesting ideas on how they want to adapt this, what they want to do with things like refrigerators and so forth. It'll be interesting to see that roll out, but that's going to be expanded upon in the future. Priority of this was pushed to Q4 so we can work on preparation for the deployment of server binaries and the private hive /servlet package. I'm going to dump information on that right before we get to QA so people understand exactly what I mean, because that's pretty major for anybody that runs their own server. Made some changes on our stance on that, and I think it'll be for the better of the game and the community. The new physics system. Ongoing development. Vehicle simulation, ragdoll, item throwing, all that's a visible representation of the new physics system in. As I say here in this key point, though, DayZ, as the programmers responsible for the physics system, are still working on it. DayZ is actually operating 2, which can be a bit of a tax on the server. So I'm eager to see that go away. But that's underway, so it's going to be obviously continued to be fleshed out. But it exists. It is there. That feature exists. All right, third quarter goals. This is the stuff I haven't gotten to before. Traps. The functional implementation exists right now with the bear traps, the tripwires, and the landmines. The tripwires don't actually plug in anything on Stable Branch right now, but the event trigger of someone running over it, it's there. We want to expand upon this and others into improvised explosives and traps paired with the existing tripwires. Yes, this means we're just going to expand upon the trolling options that is present in DayZ, but I think it's really cool, the idea of roadside IEDs and booby trapping your camps with spray paint cans, duct tape to flares, and that kind of. I think it'll be really, really awesome and incredibly frustrating if you die to it. I think more than one person's going to yell hacker when they don't know what happened. Barricading. Initial functionality of this was locking doors via lockpicks. It needed to be fleshed out significantly. However, it looks like that's going to be pushed a little bit further down the roadmap while we work on the implementation of moving all the actions to NScript, the new UI, the renderer, and so forth. It got pushed due to priority. But we still want to do it because I personally think that base building is half the objects you can bring, the improvised walls, the tents, the barrels, the farms, all that. That's one half of it, right? That's people that want to go out in the woods. That's people that want to make a base in a field. But if you're going to be running around a post-apocalyptic landscape, why would you not use a house that's boarded up? Why not? It's got 4 walls and a ceiling. So I think it's important that makes it within the definition 1.0. And I think my lead designer agrees with me. Character lifespan and soft skills. This is something I'm pretty excited about, honestly. I was surprised more people didn't yell at me about proposing this into DayZ. I know some of my designers were concerned that adding more attachment to your character is just going to make people more upset when they die. But I say, screw it. I mean, that's the point of DayZ, right? It's supposed to be high risk, high reward. So the internal builds right now have the first skill sets for this feature functioning. Some of it's going to require some new animations, but it's there. Players, characters internally can gain skill points within specific soft skills, skills that you as a player can't really affect. An example of that would be somebody new to the game bandaging their leg or implementing a splint does it just as effectively as somebody that's put in thousands of hours, right? Why not look at allowing people to grow their characters in these areas, as long as we do not affect player skill? That's like the holy grail for this. We can never stick skills in the same spot that player skills are. We can never mess with that. It should always be player ability when it comes to those things, especially things like combat. So hunting, medical, and repair skill sets for these skill types were done in prototype and are functioning. Properly displaying these are dependent upon the new UI. I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but there's a lot of stuff that needs this new UI in order for it to hit you guys' hands. We're currently hoping to see the first bunch of these skills come with 0.60, but I'm going to keep you guys filled in on it. It's dependent upon that UI being available in-game. I really want it to happen, though, so I'm just going to keep bitching until it does. Animal predators and birds. So the Bratislava team, that's DayZ development split between the cities in the Czech Republic and Slovak Republic of Prague and Bratislava. The Bratislava team has been working on the proper implementation of aggressive animal AI. Internally, we'd like to see testing on these mechanics hit experimental branch late this year or early, like the beginning of Q1 next year. I genuinely think this is going to piss a lot of people off. Tying to a bear or a wolf in the middle of the woods, it's going to piss me off. But it needs to be done. Art assets for the initial rollout of this mechanic are in place. I'm sure you guys might have seen it if you pay attention to some of the sites that like to data mine builds as they go out. Occasionally they'll find something that's not ready. There's a bear model, there's a wolf model, and so on and so forth. So right now it's just pending programming and AI work. As I said, we'll see this move to a late Q4, early Q1 goal. Aerial transport. I talked about this at TwitchCon, I think. Yeah, TwitchCon. So the initial model we went for to start testing these mechanics, and I felt that was critical right away, was the Little Bird model from Take on Helicopters. The ones from Arma, as wonderful as they are, they don't meet the art requirements for DayZ, which our art director rather fantastically has set fairly high. So we realized that the Take on model would be a perfect place for us to implement and start messing with mechanics of parts and the aerial simulation, how it affects the server-side physics and all that stuff. It was important we start working on that immediately because the art can be done a lot quicker than the technical side. The creation of assets and mechanics for both fixed wing and rotary aircraft, we're going to do both, is underway. Internal testing on the flight model is complete. We'd like to see this hit experimental at least before the end of the year. And by that I mean, I'd like to see that Little Bird, even without the majority of its parts, I'd like to see the Little Bird hit at least experimental before the team takes Christmas break. I think it would be pretty awesome if like a Christmas gift to those playing DayZ on Steam would be to give them a helicopter to go try and get. I think it's a lot of fun, but then again, I'm a good pilot. That said, we'll need to keep updating the progress on this in the status reports. I need to make sure, and you guys all, if you talk to me on Twitter, on the forums, and so on and so forth, need to harass me to make sure I'm telling you guys what's going on with the Little Bird and getting that in. Console prototype. I'm either going to make some people in this room really happy or really upset. I think PC development is paramount to us. And because of that, I don't think we're going to see a console prototype this year. It's going to get moved to Q1 next year. It's absolutely imperative we dump all of our resources into getting the PC DayZ on Steam ready for beta. Any time we might spend trying to get a console prototype going, it's ridiculous. When it gets to Xbox and PlayStation and their respective programs like the game preview program, it'll get there. But nobody wants us to rush on this, or at least I don't. All right. Got all through that boring roadmap stuff. It's boring even for me. Beta. It's important that you guys understand what I mean when I say beta. What is it for DayZ? DayZ's beta will be the point in which primary work in our offices in Bratislava and Prague switch from feature creation as I think right now it's 85%? Did I put 85? No, you'll see it later. Yeah, it's going to say 85 in a bit. Switch from our current focus, about 85% feature creation and 50% bug fixing, to as soon as we hit No, you're not supposed to see that yet. As soon as we hit beta, that's when it switches, it flops, right? We're going to start, we'll switch gears over to 85% bug fixing and content creation and 15% outlying feature content creation. It is absolutely imperative that once we hit our earmark for hitting beta is the point in which we say, all right, all of our major roadmap goals, features are in there. Now let's start making them work right. Originally, as everybody might know, our intended goal for beta was, as I think I said at the beginning of the presentation, Q4 this year. Several areas of development, like the render, as I've brought up many times before, the new player controller, the new animation system, the new sound module, completion of the physics system. All these are taking a little bit longer than expected. Not too much longer. New target is going to add a few months to this goal. That puts us towards the end of Q1 next year for the switch to beta. Trust me, nobody wants DayZ to be humming nice and working properly more than I do. So right now I'm thinking maybe a couple extra months, nothing more than that. I think we're doing actually pretty solid. At least that's my perspective internally. It's critical to understand that hitting 1.0 is not a freeze on development for DayZ. Just because we hit 1.0 and leave early access does not mean that's it. One of the first things that was told to me when I left Microsoft and joined Bohemia was that, and this was told by the CEO, so the guy that actually has the power to make these decisions, is that he saw DayZ as something that continued development for at least 5 years. We're talking new content, we're talking whether it be mechanics, features in game, expanding on stuff that we didn't have time to do in early access, or something as mundane as, I don't know, new vehicles, or maybe getting the environment team to start bringing over some of the other maps that Bohemia owns into DayZ. It actually takes a lot of work, especially some of the ones that were prior to Arma 3. There's a lot of conflicts you'd be surprised about. I should talk about that sometime. Bohemia Interactive, like I said, yeah, fully plans on continuing work on DayZ past 1.0 for at least 5 years. Oh man, I came in under my time on this. This is awesome. So, yeah, I want to hear you guys' questions. Obviously, there's a lot of you here that know what DayZ is and came to see what's going on. So the enforcers should be passing around some mics. I am recording this off a sound device just in case the stream has a problem. So we'll want to make sure that if you ask me a question, you got a mic. All right, you guys ready? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up. All right, that's good. Okay, so just raise your hand so the folks in the enforcer shirts can see you, and hit me with any question as long as it's focused on DayZ, or at least me playing DayZ. I want to hear it so we can get these answers done. Howdy.
Hey, right, so firstly, please tell me you're counting the action menu.
Dyslexia would love that. Within reason. Obviously, the rewrite of the action system is going to change how a lot of things are done, because it's not going to be as much of the original action system. There's a certain point in which the action system that's been used in the Arma titles does actually have its qualities, and then there's areas where it's horribly clunky and can get insanely convoluted. And that's why an example of us moving away from that would be Peter, my lead designer, when it comes to vehicle repairing, he doesn't want to just walk up to the vehicle with the part and scroll until you see the part you want to work on. He wants it to be regionally, or not regionally, but position-based. So let's say you have the spark plugs, you're going to go around to the engine, you're going to open the hood, because there needs to be a whole reason for you opening the hood instead of just looking pretty. And then you're going to look at the location, let's say the memory point on that model, of where the spark plugs are, and apply it there with the proper tool. There will be other areas we can expand on that, and there's going to be some areas in the game as we get to them, realize the action menu might be the best for that area, but certainly we're not going to just leave it, that's for sure. Come on, you guys got to have some questions for me. There you go. I mean, you can ask about my mother if you want.
Hey, Brian. Just wondering, is there going to be like a blood count to see how much HP you got? Like a blood count? So if you've been shot, you know what I mean, you got 10,000 HP and you get shot, you down to 5,000 and you're bleeding.
This might not be the popular answer. I'm not getting power. Oh, this is going to die soon. This might not be the popular answer, but I firmly believe that the way we're doing it right now, which is communicating through color saturation and blurriness, I really feel like that's the best way to do it for DayZ. Maybe not for, certainly not for most games, but for DayZ, I think that is the way to do it. Now, the information is there. Let's say that when we hit Steam Workshop, the information is easily accessible to content creators. So if somebody wanted to, and actually I have one of the tasks I had earmarked for the programming team is to allow us to operate a toggleable for experimental branch debug window, similar to what the mod did, that'll display some critical information to make it easier for people to file bugs, like seeing their health, their blood, their position on the map and coordinates and so on and so forth. I don't plan on making any visible blood count in numerical, no. But if you or your friends want to write a mod and put it on Steam Workshop, it would not be that difficult. That'd probably be one of the easier things to do.
Okay, thank you.
G'day, Brian. First, big shout out to anyone playing on the Aussie Conflicts Attack Force servers. Shameless self-promotion. It's one of mine. It's probably going to be one of those that people wouldn't find too popular, but you said yourself there's like some parts of the game that drive you nuts. One of mine is someone's got something in their backpack, say MP5, and they can draw that out at a split second's notice. Are there any plans to change that where they've got to actually drop the pack on the ground and open it up before they can access, just to make people think more tactically about what they're actually putting in the various pouches, like your stuff in your vests and in your pants and your shirt and so on?
So I think Peter and I agree on this both, and I guess the question would be how viable it is within our time frame. But that said, there are some mods of DayZ mods, so mods of mods that I've seen that did something similar, where you actually had to stop, or you'd hear you would hear the unzipping of your backpack and so on and so forth. There's some areas that I think could be really compelling to go further down the line and make more of a simulation. But we also need to be, I don't want to sound like I'm afraid of consumer backlash, but we do need to be aware of not going too far down the hardcore route. I know Dean said that this is the anti-game, but even the anti-game needs to be a little fun, right? Say again? Horses are going to happen. I think horses are going to be difficult personally. I think it's a crazy goal, but turns out it doesn't matter what I think because the CEO is really in love with the idea, so it's going to happen. But yes, whether or not it happens within 1.0, I can't give you the answer on that. I'm very strict when it comes to feature creep this late in the game, but I think that would be outstanding. I think you're right that would make people think more tactically, but it's one of the things that I'd imagine the community would be polarized on. So we need to be very careful how we do it. If we do it, then maybe it's like a server toggleable feature, or maybe we just leave it alone and let the modding community that's behind the hardcore side, which there's a very strong one behind it, look at it. I'm not 100% certain on it, and ask me when I get back to Prague so I can talk to Peter. Next.
Yeah, I wanted to know what you think the most frustrating thing has been due to your decision to build DayZ on the Take on Helicopters engine. What the most kind of important issue with the engine as itself has been during the development cycle?
Well, there's no question working with anything branched off of real virtuality was insanely difficult. And there are those that will say you should have done engine A or engine B, so on and so forth. There is no right choice for a game of the scope of what we want to do with DayZ. Every engine will have its shortcomings. Every engine. That said, we have a knowledge base and experience with RV. It made sense. We make RV. We have the talent pool for RV. Rather than go down the route of someone else's engine, which we're not 100% familiar with, but we could easily say the tool set was better, like Unreal. Like the tool set for Unreal is, well, it's Unreal. And the talent pool for it is just as crazy. But, I mean, Bohemia is, and I expect always will be, a company that looks at its own technology first. It's always been. It's been very minimalist when it comes to using middleware or third-party solutions. That said, yeah, there's a I don't know if I can curse, but I'm just going to do it. There's a fucking list as long as my arm. Like, it's a real pain in the ass, and I don't think anybody, including the people that are working on it right now, our gameplay and engine teams, will say otherwise. But it became pretty apparent within, I'd say, the first few months of us being on early access, and the idea of saying, all right, we're done with RV, we're going to make the next engine for the company. That made sense, and it made sense to do it paired with DayZ. We had a 2.5 to 3 year projection anyways at that point. We knew we were going to do a lot of crazy new stuff with DayZ. We really wanted to flesh it out. Why not have DayZ paired with the development of the engine? In hindsight, I think as far as stress, like stress weight and gray hairs, I probably would have chosen differently, but it wasn't up to me, right? I just have to make it happen. I'm not the guy that made the decision. I firmly believe that when we're done with what we're doing with Enfusion and everything is merged in and the bug bashing has been done, it will be very apparent to those that might have thought we should have gone with ARMA 3's variation of RV or another engine, why we went with the existing branch off of RV and decided to start chopping it up. I mean, at this point, well, not even at this point, ages ago, there's millions of lines of code difference, and it's only getting bigger. But yeah, it's a tough spot. Like I was saying, there's no one pump engine out there for it, and if there had been, somebody would have done it a long time ago. So if there's one thing I've noticed, despite the frustrations working with RV, is that we're doing something right, because I have not seen a single experience that has come close to what I felt playing DayZ. So we gotta make our way through all this. Let's call it road bumps on the roadmap. Next.
Yep. Was there any,
Hold on, I want to look at you. Where are you?
up here, right here.
There you are. All right.
Yeah.
Hey.
Like representation of persistent player damage, like bloody hands or bandaged.
I can't show you, but yes.
All right.
Actually, well, I can't show you because, well, the internet is not the best here, and the quality on this video is crap because, I don't know, Peter, my lead designer, doesn't know how to use Premiere. But it will be in the status report, which I want to get out today, at some point in time before I hit the rack. Yes, we are looking at a lot of stuff like that, like the character lifespan. I didn't go into this when I was doing the presentation because I was trying to blitz for questions. But in case you might not be aware, we've already been working on, oh man, I didn't even show that video. Man, the status report's gonna be cool. Beards, right? That's like one element of a visual change to your character, aside from getting like, shot in the pants and you see it changes the damage mat to ruined pants. Progression of your character, how long it's been alive, we have the male side of things done, and it's beard growth, it's incremental growth of the beards, and the ability to shave it off if you want to try and pretend that you're a fresh spawn. That is 100% functioning. That is in-game right now. Peter sent me a video of that, and I'm going to be showing that in the status report, which will be out later today. And also within that was a nice little Easter egg he threw in there for me. I wanted to start showing some viability of soft skills, and there was one of the soft skills would be the hunter side of things, where you're gathering resources, whether it be wood from a tree or hide and meat from a corpse of any kind. So Peter got that video put together for me of someone gathering more resources from a body while they were skinning and quartering. But what he snuck in there was bloody hands. The design team, they didn't even tell me they were doing this. I love it when they do this. The character goes up and starts skinning and quartering a body, and you'll notice it when he walks away and he opens the inventory, the character's hands are all covered in blood. And the only way to get rid of that is to walk over to a source of water or, like with your canteen, wash off your hands to get rid of the blood. And I think a lot of people might miss that. So you're gonna be running along the coast and you see some dude with bloody hands. He's like, oh, I'm friendly. You're like, bullshit, you're friendly. Next.
Yes.
Hold
you
on.
mentioned...
Where is he? Where is he?
Right here.
Ah, there you are.
You mentioned some really exciting ideas about you can't take a wheel off a bike and put it on an SUV.
Yes.
The one thing that I'm concerned about is I haven't put in 5,000 hours, don't get me wrong, I've put in probably 500, but
Still
I've spent a large proportion of that looking for particular parts. I'm terrified that I'll have to look for 50 hours to find spark plugs because my engine won't start. Are there any things that you have in mind or that the design team have in mind to combat that fear of I'm going to have to grind through Cherno and get killed 3 times so that I can actually find these damn spark plugs?
Well, it's a very, very, very fine balance between things are too common and things are too hard. And that's something that I have been toying with since the CLE first rollout like 2 or 3 updates ago, and especially for 5.8. I did a lot of that on experimental, trying to figure out the rarity, the right rarity for a lot of important stuff. Well, first off, I'd like to say that in and of itself is going to be easily controlled by people operating their own deployment of the servlet and Hive. Those CLE tools that we have, we're going to make accessible to people running their own communities. As far as the base game, the vanilla DayZ, let's call it, on the official servers, well, for one, when it comes to spark plugs, the model needs to be bigger because you put it on the ground, you can't even see it. It's smaller than a pen. It's honestly, it's just a lot of fine tuning and balancing, finding the right ratio, because there's no like, 20 per server. There's no magic number for it. You've got to go off of how you see from your own gameplay and what players are saying. Go ahead.
The only thing I would ask is, and I'll admit, I haven't played the standalone. I'm a horrible person who's only played the DayZ mod. But one thing that I would ask is, will there be the option to scavenge just models that aren't there for interaction, but might have a set of useful tools? Will that be put into standalone?
I don't know if I want to go down that to make it too, I feel like that might be making it too easy. Like, I do want people to have to put the time in to do it. And let me preface that with saying that once we open up the Steam workshops for modding and increase communities, people can change that if they want to. But as far as the base game, I do want it to be difficult. I don't want it to be too difficult. And that's where certain things like building loot types and categories allow us to start defining specifically what is in each type of building. So you'll know that, let's say it's a workshop, you'll know that you might not need to go to Chernogorsk and die 20 times because there's workshops all up and down the middle of the map or up north. So you have options of places you can go. That's both a blessing and a curse. As I was saying earlier, players are so much more spread out in DayZ unless you stick to the coast because of the difference between, you said you hadn't played the mod? No? Oh, okay, all right. It's much easier in the mod, and the numbers will tell you exactly why. I was talking with Razor not too long ago. Razor's the guy that leads the development of the mod nowadays. Great guy, really easy to get along with. I was asking him, I was like, so memory point wise, like proxies for loot, what are we talking number wise? Is it like 20, 30,000? He was like, actually it's barely 10,000. Because the amount of intrable buildings because that's typically where in DayZ mod loot is spawned in most cases, is so massively lower on the original Chernarus than Chernarus Plus. To give you a context, so let's say Razor was saying there's somewhere around 10,000 potential locations for loot to spawn. That means that you as a player know there's only a finite amount of spots to go to, so you can plan out your progression map much easier, and you're going to encounter other people on these routes because there's only so many. DayZ itself and Chernarus Plus has almost 3 million potential spots for items to spawn. So yeah, it's going to be, that in and itself is why it can be so difficult. But with loot categories and loot tagging, we can restrict that to only certain buildings and this quantity in certain buildings and this rarity in certain buildings. And then with region control, we can take it even further and say that only, like I was talking about how on military bases, say region 4, that only these items spawn, so we don't have to worry about them going all over the place. And then for the coast, we can ensure that the coast has a proper respawn frequency of certain types. Let's say, hypothetically, I make it so Makarovs and cans of beans are only spawned in region 1. That means as the server grinds through its quantities, its limitations in the central servlet of how many it can have of these item types, it's not spreading them up in region 2 and 3 and 4, and thus just depopulating the coast. When we're speaking in reality terms, it makes sense that Chernogorsk and Electro and Berezino and so on and so forth are picked clean. It makes sense, right? But that's not fun. It just punishes the people that come late to the game. So region control will allow us, without going too crazy, to at least make sure that there's a constant influx of resources on the coast, but make sure that it's not overpowered resources. Like if you want stronger stuff, you have to move inland to these high-risk, high-reward areas. Thank you. Next.
Hey, buddy.
Hey,
There.
I see.
How you doing?
Good one. Standing up. I like it.
Yeah, I got DayZ when it first came out in on the Steam, whatever it was. And the last bloke said, he's going to spend 50 hours grinding out to find something. I just checked my Steam and I played 50 hours since it came out. So I'm kind of your casual gamer. Love the mod, well done. But is there going to be, or you're aware of like guys like me that want to come in, play the game. Like, I don't want to have to grind out stuff to get myself up on the totem pole. Like, just be a new dude that comes in, just gets taken out.
I completely understand that. And you'd be surprised. There's a lot of people that want to play that way. I dare say a massive number of people that want to play that way.
Yeah.
And that's why opening some of these tools that we have, like the central servlet, like I've talked about, the server binaries, that is why it's important that we do that. Because while I have to stick to my guns and make DayZ a punishing experience in survival, other people don't have to. It's kind of the cornerstone of Bohemia Games, is that once the developers have created that base experience, we can give those tools to those who want to run servers, those that want to write mods, so that they can write their own interpretation of it. And I can guarantee you, I'd say within weeks of that happening, there's going to be a DayZ experience where you can do just that. So you'll get taken care of.
All right, cool, man. And I just wanted to mention as well, like, I know that the zombies, they're tough, but when I first started playing, I just really had to leg it. I couldn't deal with them, like,
Yeah.
one-on-one combat. Is it going to be able to jump in, slay a few zombies? Yeah, get some players on my ass, but maybe be able to take care of them and work my way up?
I genuinely think so. I think no matter how hard, I've said this before, and I said it in text, and it caused a bit of a lynch mob on Reddit. I think no matter how punishingly difficult we make our AI enemies, they're never going to be the same level of threat as a person. You can learn AI. It doesn't matter how good it is, you can outsmart it. But you can never really genuinely know what a random stranger on the street wants to do to you. You know that infected, he wants to kill me. But somebody walking up who has washed his hands and shaved his beard, and you don't know if he's your friend or not, that's, for me, I genuinely feel like that is what is scary about DayZ, is the other people. Next.
Yeah, hi. I was just going to say, I'm over here.
Oh, I need glasses, dude. Continue.
I was just going to ask what your personal favorite experience is from either the mod or the standalone.
Okay. Well, first off, I wanted to preface the gentleman who said, give me props for the mod. I'm not the dude that did the mod. I did DayZ Taviana, and I played a ton of the mod. I don't even want to. It's actually all logged on Twitch. I used to stream on my off hours. But as far as my favorite memory, I hate to push the mod, but I've got to go to the mod because to this day I still talk about it. In the mod there were helicopters, the UH-1Y, I think it was. No, it was UH-1H. UH-1H was the Huey helicopter. And when I started playing, they had just been taken out. And a little bit into playing, I was playing with a guy that now works for Twitch. His name is Soma. We used to play a lot of DayZ together, Jordan Taylor. And we were on the coast, Soma and another one of my friends, Lou, and helicopters had just been re-added to the mod. And we heard the helicopter coming. It was pitch black dark. We're all pretty geared up because at this point we're experienced players, but a helicopter, like I had never encountered that before. So I'm panicked. We can't see anything. One person has got night vision. The rest of us don't. And I'm kind of crouched next to this cargo container, and I'm having a panic attack talking to Soma over, I think we used Skype at the time. It was a bad idea. And Jordan goes, "Oh, Brian, there's a helicopter. And I think Jordan's got like a little pistol. And Jordan tells me, Jordan and the other guys in the Skype call tell me, like, you should just do it. You should just open up on the helicopter. And I've got...